I was recently recommended to check out a video by Mr. Beats on fascism, and very much like other people, he doesn't really fully comprehend why this has something to do with socialism.
I had a hard time explaining it. When I looked online for definitions, it was hard to find a definition that was historically accurate. And when I did find one, it was just ridiculously complex. And since then, I've noticed that there are a lot of people who are confidently talking about fascism, but I don't think they actually know what it means.
To give credit where due, he does concede to the very fact that fascism does pertain to collectivism.
Fascism is the idea that the group is more important than the individual. Diversity is a threat to the group. Individualism is a threat to the group. Immigration is a threat to the group. Any new ideas could potentially be a threat to the group. Basically, anything that undermines the country, nation, or even ethnic group is a threat to the group.
What Mr. Beats doesn't understand is the very fact that collectivism is a word synonymous to socialism. Again, here is the definition of collectivism. It essentially defines socialism, practically the same definition. They both mean collective ownership or control over the means of production. It's all about political centralisation. So socialism means central planning. It means something of political centralisation. And therefore this doesn't necessarily pertain to this of the Marxist theory. All the Marxist theory is this is of a variant of socialism.
Because fascism, regardless of nation or time or leader, is a reaction against the left. It's a frustration with liberalism. It's a rejection of socialism and communism and Marxism and feminism and globalism and perceived weakness. It's a reactionary movement that's a bit outside the realm of conservatism that forms an uneasy alliance with conservatives and centrist elites.
Yes, in the end goal they aim for communism, but you have to understand that socialism in practice cannot rid itself of the private sector. And this is why fascism is a reactionary system against this internationalist movement. The socialist sympathisers are people who look at socialism and try to tie it solely around internationalism, and if it's not around their theory of internationalism, it cannot be socialism. Socialism is not something confined to internationalism. That's why it's an oversimplification from their point of view. They try to fix socialism within a cardboard box and then they say, but that's not socialism, simply because the fact it didn't fit around their theory of socialism doesn't make it any less socialist.
Mussolini started a group called the Fasci of Revolutionary Action and a newspaper called The People of Italy after he broke away from the Italian Socialist Party. As you may recall, this was smack dab in the middle of World War I, which Mussolini had fought in but had returned home after getting injured. With his newspaper and the Fasci of Revolutionary Action, Mussolini started a movement, and it grew in popularity, calling for things like continuing to fight in World War I, increasing militarism in general, and most importantly, nationalism. His followers proudly call themselves fascists, with a capital F. The Italian word fascio, meaning group, which comes from the Latin word fasces, which literally meant a bundle of sticks. One stick will bend and break. All the sticks together will stand strong. And yes, this became the symbol of the fascist party. Early fascists seemed kind of like socialists, calling for things like an 8-hour workday, a minimum wage, and a progressive tax that targeted the rich. However, many of them seemed to be fans of authoritarianism. Supporters who nicknamed themselves the Black Shirts turned to intimidation and violence to shut down critics of their movement. Ultimately, the fascists were able to take over Italy after the March on Rome in 1922, and Mussolini forcibly became prime minister.
A defining ethic of socialism is coercion. It uses force. It's a political system that strongly uses socialism in many regards through political centralisation, and the defining ethic of socialism, the coercion, which is authoritarian, and most importantly, the economic central planning to control and direct the economy. Now, the difference between communism and fascism is that communism would use strong nationalisation to completely own the means of production through the state, whether people like this fact or not. It's always done through the state. This is socialism in practice. And then you have fascism that uses an element of capitalism. However, it strangles it through the strong socialist government regulation, and this of the subsidies, etc., etc., and the strong protectionist tariffs, which are socialist. And it does all this so that the state can completely control the means of production. Once the state completely controls the private sector and completely controls the means of production collectively, it's as good as this of collective ownership or control over the means of production. It's collectivism. The bottom line is, folk, it would not matter what variant of collectivism they argue for. If they deny the fact that fascism has anything to do with socialism, good for them. The fact is, you turn to collectivism, you cannot avoid authoritarianism, and it's been seen throughout recorded history. It's just one of these things with collectivism. You take away the rights of individuals, you take away individuals' liberty, and you are left with a system that inherently places the state as the main element of the economy, and you're always going to go down the road of serfdom. And that's really of what the main argument is. That's what it really all boils down to. A question of, do you support liberty or do you support going down the road of serfdom? And that pretty much is what collectivism is all about.